Welcome to Module 3 of the Introduction to Project Management. I hope you've taken the time to interact in the forum and shared your perspective and experiences with your cohort. In this module, we'll dive into the core competencies needed to be an effective program manager. We will identify those key competencies that you need to have the ability to take your team through the project life cycle to achieve results. And then we will understand how CSP can help you develop these competencies. But first, let's pause for a reflection. What competencies or skills and knowledge do you need to effectively manage a project and see the results you aimed to achieve? Take a moment and write down or think of some of these capabilities you feel are necessary. So in order to be an effective project manager, we can look at competencies as falling into two buckets. The first is leadership, and the second is technical. So what skills are within each bucket? Let's dive in. Let's focus first on leadership. The different skills that we've identified are as follows. The internal drive and passion. Now, internal drive is so essential to showing strong leadership skills in managing a project. We all know that project management and creating community change is not easy, especially in community development, where you have many challenging external factors such as your social and political environments. So having that self-motivation and continuing to check in on yourself and your inner drive is very important. Next, strong vision. You implement a project because you want to create change, but you need to know what that change is by having a vision. We've gone through this at orientation. So having that vision, knowing what place you want to reach in that future, will really help carry your team through, especially during hard times, which we all know there certainly are many hard times in community development work. Next, motivating and managing others. A great project manager knows how to manage a team and keep team members motivated. This includes knowing which staff or volunteer members are assigned to which tasks and knowing what the strengths are of your teammates so that you can delegate effectively. Next is running effective meetings. You might find this surprising that we've highlighted this here, but we truly feel that setting agendas, staying on task, having deliverables in a meeting is really essential. We have all been in some of those meetings where you sit there wondering why you're in the meeting, what the point is, and wish that you could be at your desk or in the community getting the work done. So bringing people together for a common goal is really important. We often do so with meetings, and knowing how to decide if a meeting is necessary, setting that meeting agenda, communicating deliverables, all of that is a very important leadership skill. Now, collaborating with others is, of course, very important. If we want to go far, we cannot go alone, as we talked about during orientation. We really need people to help us move closer to our vision of the world. So collaborating is essential, and we must know how to work with diverse people. The next one is mitigating and managing conflicts. Conflicts are unavoidable. And as we've already discussed, and as Dr. Deidre Combs will go into more detail, we like to see conflict as opportunity. We are bound to face disagreements. We are bound to work with people with very different perspectives. So knowing how to either mitigate or manage conflicts well in a healthy and productive manner is very important for not letting the conflict derail your project and instead seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen your project. The final skill within the leadership bucket that we've identified here is to communicate effectively internally and externally. Project managers not only perform well, but they know how to tell others about how they perform well and how their team performs well. This includes communicating with your team, but also externally with your donor, stakeholders, and beneficiaries. What we've always learned is that it's not enough to just do well. We need to be able to share what we've done well so that we can let the donor know, let the people in our community know, and gain the buy-in of others so we can move forward. This is our leadership bucket. The second bucket is around technical skills. Let's dive into those. So what technical skills are we referring to? The first is having that technical or subject matter knowledge. You are all here because you have this knowledge and you're growing that knowledge further. Some people say that this can be looked at as the science behind what you're doing. To plan a project is to plan an intervention, and you're choosing what approach you want to use to intervene. This means that you need to know the background of the subject that you're attempting to change. So like I talked about in the previous video, if you are wanting to change the recycling environment in your community, you need to know what goes into recycling. How do you start a recycling culture, or even the science in what do you need to start a recycling facility? This technical expertise is very important. Next is strategic planning. Strategic planning is a way of really setting that vision in action. Strategic planning is knowing where you want to go and how you are going to get there. This includes setting realistic goals. You'll notice a little asterisk by this because it also can fall under the leadership skills. Setting realistic goals is one of the keys to project success. If you set unrealistic goals, then your team members and yourself may not know how to actually reach those goals, and then your project may not be able to actually be successful. Next is managing a budget. This is one area where some people try and pass this responsibility on to others, but it is really important for all of us to gain at least some skills in. Managing a budget is so essential because you cannot set realistic goals, timelines, and activities without knowing what resources you have. Now, the next is managing a work plan. As you can tell, all of these are quite interrelated. There are a lot of moving parts in managing and planning a project. Now, a project manager can develop and manage a work plan, like who will do what and when, and keep everyone on the timeline of the project. Next, we have assessing and mitigating risks. Assessing and mitigating risks is so important in project planning because if you fail to do so, if one thing happens in your project that you do not foresee, it could potentially completely destabilize your project. In the assessment stage, it's very important to look at what risks exist, and then as you move into implementation, to continue to assess your risks and mitigate them as they come up. Next is partnership building. This includes a lot of the leadership skills that I just previously talked about, but it can also be considered a technical skill of its own, where you learn what your value proposition is and understanding the value add to potential partners. Partnerships can help strengthen your reach. It can help provide cost share and additional resources, bring you new approaches, and overall to contribute to you reaching your results. And lastly, we have the monitoring, evaluation, and learning. We've already touched upon this quite a bit, even just in orientation and then in the previous module. But it is not enough to just beautifully design a project and assume every aspect of it will work perfectly. Oftentimes, life gets in the way and it does not work perfectly. But if you monitor your project, if you evaluate your project as you're implementing it, then you can find those moments where you can pivot and adjust. You can adapt to the challenges that are coming at you by monitoring that project and make those adjustments needed to continue on the path to reaching your goal. Now, some of you might be very familiar with monitoring and evaluation, but perhaps haven't included the learning aspect in what you call monitoring and evaluation. We've added this in here because it's not just about monitoring how you're doing. It's not just about evaluating and saying, okay, this was successful, this wasn't. It's also about learning and looping it back into your project. So it's real-time monitoring, evaluation, and learning. These are all very essential skills in project management. Now, Let's dive in to how you will be learning these different skills throughout your CSP experience. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a very introduction course to project management. I won't actually be taking you through much more of deeper content on any of these topics. Instead, what I'll be showing you now is how you will be learning some different skills or practicing some of these different skills throughout your CSP experience. So let's start with leadership and how you will be learning or developing these skills in CSP. First, internal drive and passion. You've already started to do this. You showed this in your application, and you've even submitted your introduction to your personal leadership plan. Going through your leadership coaching with Dr. Deidre Combs, deeply reflecting on what drives you, what your passion is, will help you really find that internal drive and communicate that in your personal leadership plan. Next is having that strong vision. You've brainstormed your vision during orientation, and you're also asked to include this in your personal leadership plan. You will then communicate this at the end of program through your personal leadership plan presentation. Next, motivating and managing others. The motivating and managing others, we will dive very deeply into Deidre's motivational leadership course in a few weeks. Next, we have running effective meetings. Although we won't be instructing further on running effective meetings, you'll have many opportunities starting now at your U.S. host organization to practice doing so. We do have some resources for you listed below this video on running effective meetings and knowing when you should plan a meeting. Next is collaborating with others. This is something you will also, of course, be exercising throughout your entire fellowship. Collaborating with others through your host organization, who you'll begin to meet and learn about others this week. Collaborating with others in your community, if you have a community liaison, or get involved in other community activities. You will also be collaborating with your peer organized discussion or pod groups throughout your whole fellowship. And then, of course, when you return back home, collaborating with others as you implement your community action project. Next is mitigating and managing conflicts. This will be a course that you will begin in a few weeks with Deidre, your leadership coach, where you will really dive into conflict resolution. You'll dive into some different practices for conflict resolution, including dialogue, which you have started to do at orientation. Communicating effectively internally and externally. This also is interlaced throughout the entire fellowship. It very much relates to the other points above, but you will specifically be asked to present on your personal leadership plan at the end of program in a concise and compelling 5-minute presentation. So this will be your sort of capstone to your community leadership course. And now let's dive into technical. How will you be learning or practicing technical skills which will help you in project management through CSP? Let's start with your subject matter knowledge. You've already began to share your knowledge and learn from others during orientation when you had your breakout group. You are now at a practicum site that directly relates to the goals you communicated with the IREX team before your arrival. So your practicum site is the way where you will develop more technical knowledge while you're in your program. We also encourage you to continue to reach out to the other fellows and alumni so you can grow your technical or subject matter knowledge while you're here. Next, strategic planning. We've got that course coming up also. You have many courses, and when I say course, I also mean subjects within that larger community leadership course. So you'll have that coming up in about a month or so with Deidre. Next is managing a work plan. The work plan will be your applied learning activity for this introduction subject. The practicum work plan is a basic version of other work plans, and you'll see in the resource section of this subject that there are some more extensive work plans that you can use, which have a bit more detail around delegating roles and timelines involved. We will also ask you to develop a work plan for your community action project. Next is managing a budget. We will also ask you to develop a budget for your community action project. You can also find an optional learning course around budgeting below. Assessing and mitigating risks. Though we don't teach this subject specifically, you can find some resources below, and we encourage you, and we will encourage you to assess risks when you're planning your community action project. Next is partnership building. We have got an excellent partnership building course for you in October with the IREX staff, who's my colleague, Jackie Jenna, where you will dive deep into strategic partnership building. And lastly, we have monitoring, evaluation, and learning. We have a fully developed optional course that you can take on monitoring and evaluation. You can find the link below. You can also find it on the sidebar under supplemental learning. So, as you can see, there are many leadership and technical skills needed to be an effective manager. You have many of these skills right now. It's just a matter of developing them out a bit further and exercising them in different environments. It's all about staying on that growing edge. You might have been listening to this video and thinking, I already know this, or I already do this, or this is what I teach others. And if that's the case, then this will be an opportunity to exercise those skills in a brand new context at your U.S. host organization. It's also a chance to help others in the cohort who, again, this may be a newer subject with. So with learning about all of these different skills, we now ask you to share some of your experiences with others in the forum. Share what other skills do you feel like we've left off that you would add to this list. So that's the next step, is to look at the different resources below, share and respond to others in the forum, and then continue on to the next module. Thank you so much for joining me in this module.